Hi. Okay, I'm live. Hi, everybody. Um, I wasn't sure how to go about this because I do have a presentation that I'm making for the book tour that we're going on, and I didn't want this to be the same because I think there will be some people who will be watching this and going to some of the events. So it's just going to speak more sort of off the cuff and from the heart here today. And and that's maybe a little bit harder in some ways. But I was at my parents' house just before this morning because I had to fix their computer. I had to get the articles on their computer up that have been coming up about the book because they wanted to read them. And my Uncle Bernie was there. And my Uncle Bernie is from New Waterford. And a lot of the workers that are in the book, and I have the book here. A lot of the workers that are in the book are from New Waterford, which is the industrial side of Cape Breton. And if you don't know Cape Breton, there's an East Coast and a West Coast, like most islands. And I'm from the West Coast, which is more rural, and there is an East Coast, which is more industrial. And so Bernie married my mother's sister, and he is from New Waterford. And on page 292, I'm with one of my coworkers, and I named him Dougie. I changed everyone's names. I named him Dougie. And I'm singing a song because Dougie was always pulling my leg, and he told me that he sang with a choir called Men of the Deeps, which is a choir of ex-miners, ex-coal miners, who sang like with their hats on, with their like lamp hats on, their pit hats, and sang songs about coal mining and about Cape Breton life and everything. And they sang for the Queen and all this. So Dougie was telling me that he was one of the Men of the Deeps, even though he had a voice that was like really gravelly, and so he told me that, and then I kind of break into song, and I sing one of the songs that everybody from Cape Breton knows. This is it. It's called Coal Town Road.
We get up in the black, down the coal. We hike along the track where the coal trains load, and we make the ponies pull till they nearly break their backs, and they'll never see again. Down the Coal Town Road, we hear the whistle call. Down the Coal Town Road, and we take our towels and all where the coal trains load. In the cages then we drop till there's nowhere else to fall, and we leave this world behind us. Down the Coal Town Road.
Goes on. And Dougie and I get into it a little bit on this page about that song, because I'm not from industrial Cape Breton, and you'll have to read the page, but I am connected there. This is about the hardship of living in that town and going into the pit to work. And there's that line about the ponies pulling until they nearly break their backs, and they'll never see again down the Coal Town Road, because everybody who's watched Pit Pony or read the book Pit Pony, which we had to do in school, and there was that the ponies would go blind in the mines. They would lose their sight because they worked in the dark all the time. And I thought of that page and everything because I had been thinking about this presentation, and I was just at home where my Uncle Bernie was. And I know that Bernie grew up in New Waterford, and when he was young, his family all worked in the mines, and he lost his father when he was young, and he had an uncle who was blinded in a mine explosion when he was 18. And so they had to take care of him. And there's that line, you'll never see again down the Cold Town Road. And everybody knows things in Cape Breton, like the death of someone like William Davis, who was a miner who was killed in a strike in the 20s, fighting for rights of workers and everything. But most of us live with our injuries, the things we carry, and that's much more common. And I'm bringing all of that up because all of the things that I put in the book, I feel connect to this bigger picture for me of work culture and Cape Breton culture. And my story is connected to so many other people's stories in my mind, because we have been exporting labor here for many, many generations. My uncle went to Windsor, Ontario, where he met my aunt, and they worked in and around the auto sector boom of the 60s and 70s and 80s there. And they were the ones who like had more than we did. And a lot of my mom's family went out there to work. And I do say this in my presentation, but growing up, that was the choices that I saw laid out in front of me. You can leave for work like these people did, and you can see the kind of pain that it brings. This leaving home and going to work in whatever capitalism thing is happening somewhere else where they need workers, and watching your parents cry as you leave, and all of this, or you can stay and be the ones grieving the people leaving. That seemed to be the kind of choice that was going on. I wish there was a moderator here to sort of keep me on track, because I just keep talking and nobody's really talking back. I think I keep bringing other people's stories into my story, because I never wanted this book to be seen as a memoir of just myself. And I can't help but make it about a lot of people. Of course, I'm the protagonist in the book a lot, it's inevitable. It's a memoir. I'm on almost every page. But when you come from a place like this, and you are watching from a young age a culture of work and migration and the effects of this all around you from a very young age, you can't help but feel like you're a part of something bigger and something that isn't just your story. So I think that's why there's so much of that in there. Now I need to reel myself in here, because because I'm losing track of myself, and this is harder than it looks, just to kind of just talk to a screen here with nobody around. So let me go back to the beginning a little bit. That starts in 2005, and I've just graduated from university with my student loans, and I have, it's honestly like not even that much compared to other people. If you want to know the amount, it was only like $40,000, which is not that much compared to a lot of people. I feel like some people graduate with hundreds and thousands of dollars of loans, but to me, it was an unbelievable amount. I remember having that. I maxed out provincial and national student loans to get that much money, and I still had to work like 3 jobs, I think, through my years of being a student. Oh, somebody comments, I'm from Windsor actually, so it's wild to hear it gain. Work in the auto section is so hard on the body. Yeah, it is. Those jobs, like they were, this will come up again, but like they were booming, and Windsor was a place in that time in the 70s where everybody was going, not just people from here, but like when I go to Windsor now, I see like a huge Italian community and different communities of people who like came at that time, people who were looking for jobs, and they're like these very distinct communities, and they all have like these kind of similar characteristics, and you do see how the effects of it, of that industry and people. And even though they came and they showed up for work, they're also the first people to get laid off as soon as times are tough. You know, the boom and bust cycles affect, or every place that booms, they bust, right? So you hear this too, like, oh, the Chrysler is shutting down or whatever, and then like these massive layoffs, like who's the first ones to go? It's these workers that showed up in the beginning. Anyway, so I have no money in the beginning of this book, and I like, Cape Breton is used to hard times, but I have to tell you, if you were there at the end of the 90s, at the beginning of the 2000s, like it was dire. It was really bad. They were shutting down coal, steel. They shut down the pulp mill near where I lived, which was a big employer. They shut down my school. They bulldozed my school. They were shutting down the post offices. They were shutting down so much, and the headlines were just like, end of days. Coal is dead. And you got a sense on the national scale that was like, good. We've put so much money in subsidies into these dead industries, like, yeah, not a lot of sympathy for like these things that are going by. And like the end of 300 years of coal, everybody knew that coal was a done industry, but waiting for it to die was also tearing families apart. Like, is today the last day of my job? Is this the last year that I'll be able to feed my family? And looking around, and there was nothing else. And you had this sense of bleakness everywhere and anger, because the money that was being put in was really being done in bad faith. It really wasn't a good time. And there's someone driving into my lane right now. Hi. It's a delivery man. If it's a delivery and I have to go sign for it, we'll find out soon. Anyway, no deliveries back then. The message everywhere was like, leave, leave, leave. Like nobody was staying. There were 23 people in my grade when I was graduating. There were 7 kids in grade primary. But when my parents were graduating, like a few decades before, there were 90 kids in their class. Like the population was just going off a cliff, and people were disappearing off the streets. It was like the end of that Avengers movie where like people were just like disappearing. And they were going to Alberta. That was where the money was. And some of the interviewers who talked to me about the book, sometimes they're like, do you know that you were going into like somewhere like complicit with, you know, like bad business or like environmental stuff? But like nobody here was used to being treated well, or used to working for a company that was like good for the environment or whatever. We lived on an island that had the biggest toxic waste site in North America. It was the Sydney tar ponds. It was in the middle of the town. Like if you were unfamiliar with the Sydney tar pond, it was the runoff from Sydney Steel, and it was literally in the middle of Sydney, and it bumped up against like residential areas, and it was a huge toxic waste site that like gave people cancer. And it took years to clean it up. I think it was cleaned up in like 2007. And of course it like it was like up against the least white areas in the town as well, because that's environmental racism like to a T. But nobody around here was used to like companies treating you well, or having any decency. So when you get a job somewhere, you leave somewhere, like you don't expect anybody to. That guy's like driving away slowly now. He's like, hi, do I need to? Okay, can you? I'll be right back. Okay. I mean, in the whole meeting, though, I paid them. Oh my God. I'm so sorry, everyone. I'm sorry, I'm new. Come back tomorrow. I'll ask you to get there. Oh my God. I'm sorry. Well, that was really something. No, that was UPS, and I have to like pay duty on something, but I already paid it. So I I don't know what to tell you. I'm not paying duty twice. And and I live in the rural area, so like he's like, I'll come back tomorrow, and I'm like, I don't know, I'm in the middle of something. What suspense? I forget what I was even talking about before. So just that it was like fucking bleak as shit over here, and everybody leaving. That's what it was. Industrial waste. Oh yeah, industrial waste. Yeah. So anyways, like so like to anybody leaving over here, this is what this is what a job was. It was like, you have a job, great. Do they treat you like shit? No shit. And so I never went out there like expecting to like a job or something. In fact, no, like, oh my god, I'm like, look at my, I'm like sweating on this guy. Sweating on my UPS guy. Well, we were over there one time, and a friend of ours, like we got a friend of ours a job, and he came from like a kind of a better off family, but he was like, oh, I heard you guys are making good money. And then he went out there, and he had been there for a couple of weeks, and he's like, I'm leaving here, like I've never been more disrespected than out in this job. People just yell at me all the time, and like I'm not taking it anymore, and stuff. And me and my friend were like eating our lunch in like the lunch hall, and we were like, what? Okay. Like, good for him. He like had his like his limits. Like, he's like, I'm not gonna be treated like this. And we were like, whatever. People treat me like shit all the time. That part's not in the book. There's a lot that's not in the book, because it's just there was just too much. There was too much that could not be in the book. And later on, by the way, when we when like this goes on to Instagram, I can maybe Jordan Curley can like cut out that whole UPS fiasco. That would be cool. He's still outside. He's like calling his boss to be like, did she pay for this package? I did. One thing that's not in the book is I had a I don't know how many of you have read it. I feel like a few people have read it, and a few people have not. So I'm talking to kind of like both sides of people. But my sister Becky is in the book, because she came and she worked there, and she's in there quite a bit. But also my younger sister Lorene came and worked there for a few months, and she's not in the book at all, which is kind of crazy if you think about it. But she came at the end of my time there for a few months, and if I had to put her in the book, it would have added like 50 more pages, because I would have had to introduce talking to Lorraine and bringing her in and giving her like several pages of her own sort of story and journey, and then having her leave as she did in real life. And then, well, the book is already like 450 pages. And in the end, it was one of those things that got cut. And you're kind of balancing what you're going to put in and keep out of the book. And I, in a lot of ways, like I regret not having that story in there, because it was, to me, like it was very important to tell the truth of things that happen. But then I get why that was a cut that was made, because of this, what we had to work with, the room that we had. And if the book was just overly long, people would be like, I can't read anymore. I can't, I don't know what how we could have like fit that in, because I was just about to leave by the time Lorene showed up. But I will tell you about her coming right now because we are here together. She came and she had no money, and she was in university, and she called me and she was like, I don't have anything. I don't have any money, and you guys are out there, you and Becky, and what am I going to do? And like, I can't afford my apartment this year. And I was like, I'll get you a job for the summer, for the 4 months that you have off. And Becky and I fought a little bit over the job that we would get her. Becky thought that she could work in town as a waitress and get bigger tips than she would on site. And I was like, absolutely not. Fuck no. She's going to stay where I can watch her like a hawk. And because Becky lived in town at that time, like going back and forth to work. And I was like, I'm going to be on top of her like so I got her a job on site where I worked, and she was a janitor. And so she had to live in the camp with me. And because I didn't want her to be in town like with a bunch of like I don't know, I felt like that was a lot safer to be in the camp where where I would just like watch her like a psycho. And if you read the book, you'll see why I wanted to do that. And a janitor was not a glamorous thing. You had to wear like those paper shoes over your boots when you come inside and like mop things up. But she said she made like $18 an hour or something, and she's like, she had dollar signs in her eyes. It was like the most amount of money she'd ever made in her life. And that was the first job that I had there too. I made $18 an hour, and I was like, holy fuck. Big money. And like welders make like $40 or $100 an hour. I don't even know how much they were just rolling in cash. And I thought that $18 an hour was just like gigantic. I never made more than $25 an hour, I think was like the highest, or $22. I never made a lot of money. Question 2, did anyone help or advise you on what to cut? Oh yes. If it was up to me, I'd still be making the book probably, and you would still be like, when's this book coming? And I would be like buried with it, be in my grave. And I had editors. Tracy Huron from Drone and Quarterly especially was a massive help, because they were difficult choices. And when you have a book that is so when you have a book that's so personal, and you're so close to it, to your like, it's your story, right? Everything is personal to you, everything is important to you, and you're like, these are my choices, this is my memory, and people are telling you, I don't know if readers are like gonna like really care about this or this thing. You're like, fuck you. You're not like that, but usually like the suggestions for cuts would come in, and then you have your little like you know, your little reaction that you have to sleep on, and then in the morning you're like, yeah, you're right, that's fine. Because everybody's precious about their little things, and but you have to look at it as the object of the book. You know, people are going to read it, and they have to like it as a book, not just like your diary, which you know, we're not all Samuel Pepys. We can't all like make a banger diary and be like you know, it's not even a diary, it's just like a bunch of memories. And I wrote out almost everything that I could remember in the beginning, which is not a book. It's just like a huge sprawling mess. And we had to fashion it into a book that had something to say, more than just like, here's everything I remember. So it was a tough job. I guess, are we taking questions now? I'm like all over the place. We can take questions. That might be better. I'm like not even sure what's going on. Yeah, okay. We can take questions. UPS man is he is like rolled off. He's taken off with my purchase. Bye. What? Oh, okay. Questions coming. Questions are coming. I have questions for the UPS man. Question. Some of the comics from the original Ducks weren't included. Oh, some of the comics from the original Ducks weren't included. Why do you think you emphasize them versus now? Only one wasn't included, I think, which is the one where the sex worker was snuck into the camp. That's the only one that comes to mind. And there was no reason that that wasn't included. That story was, I was woken up in the middle of the night and I was told to come into the bathroom, the women's bathroom at Albion Sands, where there was a woman in there. And someone told me that she was a sex worker who was having a bad trip on some drugs. And there were no sex workers allowed on the camp because there were anybody who wasn't a worker wasn't allowed in the camp, like a site worker. So someone had snuck her in. Someone told me in the trunk of a car, and then they were all doing drugs, and she had started like having like a bad trip, and like had gone into the bathroom, and there was one female security guard in there with her while the ambulance was on the way. And someone had woken me up to go in there and help because I was a woman too. And I was out of my depth. I didn't know what to say because I wasn't trained in any of this. And I was very just like the security guard was like, "It's okay, ma'am, it's gonna be okay." And the woman was like, "Get away from me." And I just sort of stood there like an idiot. I didn't know what to say. And that was in the original 2014 comics. And it was one of those things that just didn't make it into the final book. And there was no real reason, because a lot of the times there was just no real reason for things not to go in. It wasn't that it wasn't important or didn't stay with me. It did. But it didn't make it because you just don't have room for everything. There are things that impacted me a lot, and they didn't make it into the final book because the thing is already 450 pages and you can't fit everything in it. How much time did I spend on the book? Years, many years. It's hard to say overall because I lost my sister to cancer in the middle of it, and I had 2 children in the middle of it. So I submitted it in 2016 and finished it I think earlier this year. So I don't know. Did any authors or books guide your entry into doing something long form? I don't know. Yes, I read comics all the time. Read them. Nothing in particular, but on the whole, just everybody's comics. Sally Madden asks, is there any reading you enjoyed to get ready for making the complete work? Well, listen, Sally, you and I were talking even back then. By the way, everybody, Sally, I had some chats with her that I was going through the other day from when I was living in the camp when she was Sally Bloodbath. And so hi. To get ready for making a complete work, I think I read a lot of memoirs to see how other people were doing them. But you ended up finding a lot of things that you kind of didn't want to do. And in the end, you end up just making what you were going to make anyway, I think. like you read other things for research, and then you end up doing what you were going to do. I think that's how it's kind of like reassuring in a sense that that's the way it works. Because you think like, oh, what if I end up copying other people? And then you don't, you just end up doing what you were going to do anyway. but you still have to read all those other books for some reason. That's how I found it. If you were going to give advice to someone starting comics now, what would you say? I don't know how anyone starts comics now. It's a totally different landscape. I think you just find your way. Whatever landscape it's in, you got to feel your way around in the dark, and for a little while, and then you figure it out. Whatever avenues are available will present themselves to you because you've been looking. And if you want it, you'll find it. If you're going to be making comics, then you're going to be making comics. If you are kind of half interested in making comics, then you're not going to do it. If you really want to be making comics, then you're going to be making comics, but everybody I know who makes comics is doing it because that's what they want to do, so they're doing it. And from someone who's read the book, how do you pronounce "bye"? You pronounce it "bye." You got to look up the song "I's the Bye," and then you'll hear it. "I's the bye who builds the boat." It's like a short form of boy. Bye. How's she going by? Another, how many animals do you have? I have a dog and 2 cats and 5 chickens. And there's a bunch of cows outside, but they belong to my neighbor, but they use our fields. So they're sort of our cows. And that's it for questions at the moment. Unless there are more questions. I like, do I find inspiration in how am I gonna, Guy Delisle's work? Am I pronouncing that right? Yes. I find inspiration in it. Yeah, I like it, and I do. I'll tell you the only thing that I actually cribbed. Oh, I'll get it. I'll be right back. Sorry. I took off on you. No. Of course, it's like not there when I want it, but I took off. Onward towards our noble deaths. I has character pages in the beginning of it, which I took because he's drawing like Japanese soldiers in the war, and everybody's wearing the same like the same outfits and like uniforms and stuff, so you can easily see how like it'd be kind of confusing. So I did the same thing. I read that and I was like, that's a great idea. So I did the same thing because there we go. Because you have a lot of people in mind who are wearing like the same outfits, like PPE and everything. And I was like, if I don't put character pages on, then people will be kind of confused about these guys. Because even on site, you had people, you'd be like, who are these guys? Because they all wore the same hat and glasses and PPE. And sometimes you'd see them without their hard hats and stuff and glasses, and you'd be like, who? They'd talk to you and you'd be like, who are you? Because you didn't recognize them without their hats and stuff on. So am I going to the NCS event this weekend? No. The National Cartoonist Society? No, I only went to that once. I went to that once and it was very strange for me to be there. I mean, it wasn't a strange event. I was just like, these guys are like not, I'm not one of these guys. The newspaper cartoonists, they were all very nice, but it was like it was wild. They were like clearly from a different world than I was at the time. Like I was a web cartoonist, and they were all newspaper cartoonists, and it was really it was like a look into a different era, because like, you know, I grew up reading newspaper comics and stuff, and so you saw the names, but I sat at a table with a bunch of people from Texas. I think they were from Texas. And they're like, sit down. I can't do a Texas accent. Jesus. But they were all like, I didn't know where to sit. And they were like, sit with us. And they were all like laughing and jolly. And then they introduced themselves, and they were all Andersons. I think the name was Anderson. And they were the family that drew Marmaduke. And I blew my mind. I was like, somebody drew us Marmaduke. They're all here. They're like, yeah, our old daddy drew Marmaduke, and now here, like, they all introduced themselves, and they were all really proud and stuff, and they're like, everyone likes a big old dog. Anyway, that's my time at the NCS convention. Anyway, everyone does like a big old dog. And now I can't, like, now I read it, I'm like, that's what I think about how nice all these people were. So and how everyone likes a big old dog. Can I talk about If I Cannot Have My Own? Yes. If you are following me on Patreon, I am working on a draft of a story called If I Cannot Have My Own, which is a quote I pulled from an Alistair MacLeod short story, which is just a short story that is turned into like a longer story, and it's something that I've had in my head, and I'm doing it without any kind of pressure to make it perfect, which is good, because like now that I'm right at the end, I'm like, there's things I would change, but it's based on a very short story that my dad told me one time, like a true thing, and I fleshed it all out, and it deals with a lot of themes that are very present in ducks, I think, but pulled back into Cape Breton like a generation before. And so it's been on my mind for a while, and I just thought, I'm just going to start drawing it out one day. I did, and it will be interesting to look at it when it's all done, and then maybe, you know, fix it up into something a bit more more fleshed out, more like with like you know, proper, because I've never done fiction before, and I've never done something like that where like I was just doing updates as they go in public. So anybody who's following that on Patreon is really seeing like the mechanics right from the beginning, for better or for worse. It's been an interesting experiment. So what's here? I gotta scroll back up. How did your fellow workers react to being depicted in your work? Well, I sent, as I was working on it, I was talking to a few of them, like Emily, if you read the book, Ryan, if you read the book, Lindsay. And so a few of them were very well aware of their presence in it. Some of them I talked to on the phone, like Joe. And some of them haven't read it yet, but they know that they're in it. And some of them I just mailed some to Mike and Brian. But everybody reacting very well, I have to say. Nobody has told me to F off yet. They may yet, we don't know. But everybody, when I talk to them, I'm very upfront about what I'm doing, and everybody's been very generous, and I can't ask for better than that. Especially someone like Ryan, who went through a hard time in the book, and let me depict it. So I've been lucky. What comes next? I do have some picture book contracts, and then I will try to work my way into fiction. I think for something different, because I don't think anybody wants any more drawings of my face. I don't think I'm ready to go back into humor just yet. What are my favorite comics recently or from past years? I don't know. It's always like the last one I read, right? I recently read The Third Person by Emma Grove. That was very good. I recently read oh my God, I don't know. That's such a hard question all the time. What I read. I read lots of comics. I feel like I made a post on Twitter like not long ago about like a bunch of Toronto Quarterly ones that I really like. You gotta go dig that one up. Buy from Toronto Quarterly. Am I right? Super important question. How am I doing? I'm doing good. I was just talking to someone about this, but like this is like a book that's coming out and a lot of people are reading it, and it's very personal, and like all of a sudden there's like a lot of media stuff, but I'm still just sitting in my house, like my entire career has been like this. People read the things that I make and everything, but I'm still always just like sitting in my house. So like if I close this laptop, like it's all just like happening on the computer, so it's funny, except that's not totally true. People in my town are reading the books, and like when I go to like the store, people will talk to me about it, and my aunts and uncles and stuff have all read the book. So in this case, there is like real life repercussions, much more than the New York Times. Like my neighbors are reading things, so that's real. That's more real than the New York Times, funny enough. Someone else asks, your folks' names were changed. You said folks' names were changed, but were their likenesses changed too? Sometimes, but also my drawings are not, they're not exactly portraits. So I'm not too worried about like the like likeness police coming up and being like, you really like these dot-eyed people look like too much like this person. Will Fort Mac contact people to identify themselves? I don't think really. Did you work digitally or on paper? Digitally, because I knew there would be a lot of mistakes, and there were a lot of things that needed to be edited. When did you decide to start this project? Probably in 2014. When I made those first comics, I knew this would be a bigger thing then. And what led to your decision to make a long involved work about it? It was in the back of my mind for a long time, I think. Can I reshow the onward page? The onward page? What an onward page? What's that? Oh, I couldn't find it. I couldn't find the book. Yeah, it's like one of those that I'm giving to. I'm always like borrowing, like getting. I'm always giving people books. I'm a one-person graphic novel library around here. Or either trying to get people into comics, or like they know that I have the comics. I've got the comics. And Morgan's not reading them, so not to throw you under the bus, Morgan, but he's not. So I'm always like, yeah, read my books. Oh, we should wrap up, they said, or Instagram will cut us off otherwise. So we're all good for questions. Just all right then. Well, you guys, I'm so sorry that like there was this UPS drama in the middle of this. I can't believe, of course it like happened in the middle of this, the worst time. But I'm sure the package is like so worth it. Authors, they're just like us. They get some drama in their lives. And but I hope this was okay. I'm sorry if I like went on too many weird meandering things, and I hope you like the book. That's really it. I hope you pick it up. I hope you like it in whatever way you can get it. And thank you so much. Morgan says he read Ducks, and that's the most important thing. Oh my God. I can't believe I trash talked him and he was watching this whole time.